Okay, guys, I told you that I would put together some videos from Chapter 9 for you because it seemed that there were some issues or some questions. So, Chapter 9, it'll be in small videos because I can't record all at one time the entire chapter. So we talked last week about the fact that title to real property, it's about ownership. Who owns the property? That is who holds title. And sometimes there are encumbrances that attach to that property that affect the quality of the title, meaning that it has a defect in the title. There's not where the owner just completely owns it outright with no types of encumbrances attached to the title. Okay. In this chapter, it also discusses title searches and title insurance. Title insurance is insurance that protects the policyholder against losses that are related to some defect in title. And title insurance companies issue title insurance policies and will defend the property owner and the lender's interest should some third party come along and make a claim to the real property. So first thing we need to talk about is what is good and marketable title. That means it's title that a reputable title insurance company would be willing to issue a title insurance policy for. It has nothing to do with the physical condition of the property, and we discussed this last week. It can be a falling down shack. It doesn't matter what the condition of the property is. Here we're talking about whether or not you have good, clear, free title to the property. It's about ownership and not physical condition of the property. It also has nothing to do with what the real estate market trends or what's going on with property values. That has nothing, has no bearing on title. Okay, so how do we find out what the quality of a title is, or what type of title the proposed property owner has? We have to do what's called a title exam or a title search. Usually, it has historically been the attorney that would go to the courthouse and do that title search. Now, paralegals are doing it. There are actual title title search services that will do it. And there's so much of it that can be done online now. It really depends on how much a particular county jurisdiction has scanned to electronic. Usually they're at least back to the 80s, but of course in smaller counties they have not been able to scan that far back. But, the people who do the title search are title examiners, and what they're doing is looking at a particular piece of property's chain of title, which means the public record of everyone who has owned this piece of property. Okay, that's the chain of title. And it's going to, when you go to the courthouse or you log into the system to do it online, it's going to give you a picture of what has gone on with that piece of property forever if you wanted to go back that far. If you can, assuming you could find the records, but usually it's going to be limited to the past 50 years. So when you do a title exam, you are looking or you're on the lookout for title defects. Something is missing that would give the owner complete good and marketable title. Okay, and serious title defects can delay or even cancel a real estate transaction. Those serious defects are called clouds on the title. Okay, clouds on the title would be things like, even if you have a loan, if the current property owner has a loan on the property, that's a cloud on the title that we're going to have to correct before the current owner can sell to the new buyer. And there's a distinction between, and we talked about this when we covered chapter 8, when we discussed about recording statutes. There's a difference between active and constructive knowledge. Active knowledge are those things that we know for sure, we've been a party to, we have knowledge of. Constructive knowledge means things that we are presumed to know. And in real estate, that means if it has been recorded in the public records, even if we don't go and check or have a title search done, we are assumed to have constructive knowledge of it because it is in the. Okay, so what do you need to know in order to go and complete the title exam? You need to know the legal description, the current legal description of the property, the name of the current owner, which may be referred to as the record title holder or the title holder of record. If you have a copy of that current owner's vesting deed, which a vesting deed, as we talked about from chapter 8, just means the deed that they took ownership of the property. That'll start you on your exam. As I said previously, a full title search covers the last 50 years in the chain of title, and a limited title search does fewer years. The example I gave you for a limited would be, let's say that I was the attorney who closed a loan that Millicent and her husband, when they bought a house 20 years ago, and I did a full title search then, or let's just say 5 years ago. I did a full title search then, and now they want to refinance. The lender's going to require another title search, but it can be a limited one because I've already done the 50 years, so I'd only have to do from the time of my complete full title search until today. Okay. So what do you do? What are your steps as far as going and completing the title search? This first one, you really can do either at the beginning or at the end. It doesn't matter. You need to contact the tax assessor's office and find out what information they have about when this property has transferred with regard to who's paying the property taxes. And you want to know what's the status of the real property taxes. Are they current? Are they past due? Or are they about to be due? If there are delinquent real property taxes, those are going to take a precedence over any other kind of encumbrance. So we're going to have to pay those before we can, have a closing. Then, especially when you're working in a subdivision, you want to go look at the plat index, or look at the plats that are recorded for the county. Remember, like we talked for chapter 10, the plat's just a top down, an aerial drawing of the subdivision. And we are going to look at it to see whether or not we've got any easements, whether there are restrictive covenants for the community. All of those things place an encumbrance on title. You just can't do whatever you want to with your property. There are some things that are going to limit what you can do. Okay. Then you want to go to the grantee and the grantor indices. And this is the big bulk of what you do with a title exam. And yes, lots of this can be done online. I learned how to do it standing in the courthouse in the deed books, and so that tends to be my preference. But certainly someone who learns to do that through learns electronically, I'm sure that it is a quicker process. I just feel more confident when I see the actual deeds in the book. So the first thing you're going to go to is there's going to be a index that's called the grantee index, and it's an alphabetical listing of everybody who has gotten some real property interest within a certain period of time. It could be, depending on the size of the county, they could fill a book with a large county in a month. Another county may have the same book for an entire year or more. So it really just depends on the county as to the size of it. But it's going to be a listing of everybody who has gotten a real property interest within a certain period of time. And then the grantor index is the opposite. It's the alphabetical listing of everyone. And remember, everyone, every person, that could also mean companies as well, business entities. So grantor index is everyone who has conveyed a property interest within that certain amount of time. So you are going to start with the grantee index, and you're going to start from the day that the courthouse has the records the most up to date, and you're going to move backwards looking for your current owner's name, going backwards until you find the deed where he took title to the or she took title to the property. And you're going to till you get to their vesting deed. It's always good to make a copy of that deed. And then from there, you're going to take whoever sold or granted the property to our current owner and keep going back in the grantee index with their name until you get to their vesting deed. And you're going to keep going backwards until you get to at least 50 years. Usually it doesn't land right on 50 years, and you sometimes have to go even further. And once you do that, and along the way, you're going to look for any document that granted an interest in this property. Then you're going to do exactly the same thing in the grantor index, except now you're going to move forward. And you want to make sure that the vesting deed, that everything lines up with who owned the property and when they transferred it to the next party. Okay, it's time consuming and sometimes tedious, but that's the process that you have to go through to ensure that the person who is selling the property truly has title to do that. Okay. Another thing that you need to realize is when you go to the clerk's office, they're going to have a date posted, and that's called the effective date. They're telling the public, whoever comes into the courthouse, that the records for the county are up to date as of that particular day. Smaller the county is, it may be, the effective date may be yesterday. The larger the county, it may be a week gap. And so in order to cover that gap between whatever's the effective date and the current date, the title examiner is going to have to go back to the deeds before closing to update up to that date. And then we're going to do the same thing after the closing process to make sure the new documents have been recorded correctly and that title has actually been exchanged, and that's called the date down. Okay. A few other books that you have to look at when you're in the clerk's office. You've got to check the lien books to see if there are any outstanding liens against the property. And you're going to check every owner's name that you found in that title search process, because if there's anything against any owner, you've got to make sure that they've all been satisfied. If you are dealing with a business entity, you need to check the UCC index to see if there are any liens against the property, the personal property that's owned by the business entity. That would mean, if the property owner is ABC Corp and they make widgets, and we're going to go look in the UCC index to see if they have borrowed against their inventory of widgets, because that could have an effect on title. We're going to look at the list pendants. That's going to be a list of any lawsuits that have been filed, but yet there's not been a judgment entered on them. And then anytime that you're dealing with a probate, an estate, we need to make sure that that the estate's been probated correctly. So we may have to go to the probate court records as well. Then that title examiner is going to go back and prepare a title report or an abstract explaining what they found in their title searches. Okay, and based on that, then the closing, sorry for that pop-up. Let's see if I can get rid of that. The closing attorney may be asked by the title insurance company to issue a title opinion letter, which is basically what the attorney's professional judgment is as to the status of the title. What type of title does the current owner have? Okay, so we're going to break on this video.